Welcome to Artistry. This is Farah Yasmin Sheikh, and I'm thrilled to have yet another amazing artist on today. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Today, I welcome Nikita Shah. Nikita was born in Bombay, India, and is now based in Brooklyn. Nikita is an artist and educator working with Kalamkari, a 3,000-year-old hand-painted textile tradition currently practiced in Sri Kalahasti, India. The only Kalamkari practitioner in the US, Nikita follows its most traditional methods, using a bamboo kalam or pen and natural dyes sourced from minerals and plants. Nikita's work centers self expression, embodied memory, and collective storytelling through the concept of fursat, a pedagogy drawn from the South Asian concept of leisure, reflection, and wisdom. Drawing from intergenerational knowledge and lived experience, Nikita explores themes such as the somatic impact of abuse, the grief of being a woman within patriarchal systems, and migration. Through the narrative potential of Kalamkari, Nikita expands the form into self portraits, abstraction, and soft sculpture, examining the reparative possibilities of ritual, land, and material as part of the healing process. We are going to hear so much more about Nikita, about her practice of Kalamkari, and spoiler alert, how I get to collaborate with her very, very soon. Please join me in welcoming Nikita Shah to Artistry. Welcome to Nikita Shah here on Artistry.
Thank you, Farah. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you.
I don't think I've ever done a slip of the name like I almost just did. I almost said partistry. And I was like, oh, maybe that's because I feel so celebratory when I'm with you, like a party. Or maybe it's because we've been having so many conversations about partition. Who knows? But hey, we'll call the podcast Artistry. But
Yes.
well, Nikita, it is so lovely to have this time with you. We are going to certainly get into how you and I have had the chance to meet virtually, be introduced recently, and what we've been cooking up, so to speak. And we will, again, certainly get there, but I'm excited to actually just deep dive into all things Nikita first. And so, that said, what I love to do is really of each of my guests sort of ask your origin story, where you were born, brought up, anything about your personal family history that you might want to share with us.
Yeah, I was born in Bombay. Um, I lived in different parts of India growing up, Bangalore, Pune, Bombay, and then I left home to do my undergrad in Kerala, and then I was in Hyderabad where I worked, and from Hyderabad I came to the US. And that's the TLDR version, really. When I was in Hyderabad, like I worked with weavers and artisans for 8 years,
Mm,
for which I lived in like many different like towns and villages and cities and places for weeks and months together in and out. But yeah, that's the long and short of the places that I've lived in.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you've been in the US for how long now?
A little over 7 years now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Uh,
And again, as we heard in your introduction, you are based in New York, in Brooklyn. Um, and you do still have quite a bit of family in India, and you go relatively frequently, right?
yeah, like
Yeah.
I would say like all my parents are in India,
Okay.
my childhood friends are in India.
Yeah.
I came here to study, and yeah, that's what brought me
Right.
to this country.
Well, again, we heard a little bit about your practice and, your preservation really of this tradition of Kalamkari in your introduction. But I'm so curious, how did you even get introduced to it? Yeah, walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think I have two stories to this. One is my
Hmm.
professional story where when I was head designer for a brand in India that worked with textiles. We worked with over like 12, 15 different textiles across India. So like from weaving to block printing to embroideries, and Kalamkari was one of them.
Mm.
And that's how I got introduced to Kalamkari. I got introduced to the artisans. My
Okay.
mentor, Mamta Reddy, who's a Kalamkari revivalist for the past 30 years in India. She lived in Hyderabad, so like she really became my second mother. And she,
Mm.
like even my mom knows that I have two mothers, and she's my second
Yeah.
mother. So that's how I got introduced, or like I got into Kalamkari really. But I think like going back as a child, I grew up here in Kalamkari from my own mother. So
Okay.
she wore Indian textiles, where most of my other friends' moms were, in Bombay, were wearing polyesters and nylons and synthetics because it was easy to wash. And Bombay was rainy and monsoony and humid, and cottons weren't the most easiest to
Mm.
wear, but mom still wore her kalamkaris and her indigos and her venkatgiris. And
Mm.
so these were words that I'd heard grown up, while growing up. I saw her taking care of her cottons, really,
Mm.
washing her individually, starching them and ironing them. And, like weekends would be like, she would just be like sitting and ironing like all her clothes, all my clothes. So I think that's really where the seed of textiles lies within me, is seeing that. And while in my professional journey, like I see that giving care to these kind of textiles is such a normal practice, but I think it was very unique because in the setting that I grew up, where
Mm.
it was urban Mumbai, we were middle class. All my other friends' moms were, in their nylons and shiny synthetics, and my mom was in her like cottons, her starched cottons.
Mm.
So yeah, like my relationships to textiles, and how I think it's been in me and with me through both my mothers, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And knowing that that seed was planted somewhat subconsciously. And then you mentioned, though, that then you were exposed to all of these things. And um, you mentioned the name Mamta Reddy, right? Right. So,
Yeah.
was what was it that drew you specifically to Kalamkari then?
Mm.
What? Yeah.
I think I've always been drawn to natural dyes and the
Mm.
earthiness of, um, and whether it was like seeing my mom wear her indigos, and
Yeah.
or my mom like bagru prints and dabu prints, and even
Yeah.
if it wasn't Kalamkat, it was about the natural dye. I think for me, um, I think what it really does to me, and now that I've become a adult with critical thinking skills, I think about like how these colors have always felt grounding to me.
Mm.
These dyes always felt grounding to me, especially since I've quote unquote not grown up in like one place, right?
Yeah.
For entire life, right? So like these kind of like textiles have always felt like home to me, and like
Mm.
felt that I have a lot of like land with me because they are from the land literally. um I think what's exciting, or what was exciting with Kalamkari, was that it's the convergence of a textile tradition but also art,
Mm.
because it's hand drawn, right? Like, so as a designer, like I we always face this, that can we get the same thing in like 500 meters, or like can we get the same print in like 200 saris and things like that. And it was handmade and hand done, right? Like everything
Yeah.
was hand drawn, where replications weren't possible. Um, and I think that aspect of it really stood out for me, compared to like a block print or, other natural dye textiles.
Mm.
And that was the most exciting about like Kalamkari to me.
Okay. No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it is this beautiful convergence of, all these components that are a part of you, and then that kind of coming into this very tangible sort of, craft and
Yeah.
tradition. Beautiful. Let's go ahead. We'll take our first break here. And welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah speaking with Nikita Shah today. And we are hearing a little bit about, again, how your relationship became what it is today with this craft. And how old were you when you started learning the technique, if you will?
Uh, Early 20s when I like first professionally got to work with it. I
Yep.
was designing for Kalamkari. Like, I was doing fashion, I was doing textiles. It was still very design focused.
Yeah.
But that's how I really got to learn Kalamkari, and I got to
Mm,
like see it even if I like practicing with my own hands. Uh, and like go to the to the cluster, sit with the artisans, sit with
mm.
Mamta Mart, like design innovations and like different things. So I want to say like early 20s is when I
Okay.
got yeah.
And something you shared with me, and again, I expressed even in introducing you, is how your work centers around self-expression, and you've I'm going to use the word innovate. You've almost taken this technique and your approach to it has become something that's very sort of personal to you. And yet, I guess before we get into that, what is this is a 3,000-year-old tradition, right? What tends to be the subject, the as far as when this technique is used? You mentioned, you would go and observe the artisans. What are they creating through this technique?
Um, when I started working with them, I want to say now like 15 years ago around
Hmm.
approximately. And it's also wild to me to think about the fact that it's been 15 years, saying it out loud. Uh, they really were doing anything that you wanted to do, right? Like
Okay.
again, it it's a freehand thing, they have the skill. We worked on a collection that was inspired by the Argentine Allura, like frescoes, like getting motifs from there,
Hmm.
figures from there, like translating that on Kalamkari. Uh, but like, beyond that, like it's mostly centered around Hindu mythology. If you were talking
Hmm.
of like narrative subjects or florals and chins and flowers. So these are like the two broad categories I want to say that Kalamkari practices or has
Right.
practiced. And that's what I kind of like saw when I got into it 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've always done it in that traditional technique of using the bamboo, dipping it in the respective ink, and right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there is it, if somebody is essentially, if they're not using those as the tool, is it no longer considered kalamkari?
That's a great question you asked. I did a little bit of field work maybe 3 years ago,
Mm.
because up until my own practice my own practice with my hands like about 5 years ago, I only work with Mamtama, right? And I still continue to only work with her, but it was important for me to like go out and like do field work and field
Yeah.
research, which I continue to keep doing. And that was a question I asked most of the artisans that I met,
Mhm.
whether they were actually doing the kalam or not, or they have different
Yeah.
techniques that they were using. And I asked them that, what does, Kalamkari mean to you, like beyond
Mm,
your own practice? And anything that's written with a kalam and the bamboo pen, right? Like that tool itself becomes so central to the craft, right? Like, because there are artists or artisans who are using paintbrushes, who are using
yeah,
sponges, using screen printing techniques or like tracing techniques. But again, like that, then I feel it's like painting and not color, right? Like the tool itself is so central and so unique to the craft that,
yeah,
at least for me, I think it's kalamkari, right? Like the word itself is like
yeah,
craft. Kalam is pen and kari is craftsmanship, right? So like thing that is written with that pen is kalamkari. Yeah.
yeah. No, makes
Yeah.
sense. Well, as you know, I have been a practitioner of Kathak for now almost 3 decades. And it's interesting and you'll see where I'm going with this, right? When you come from and you're in present day, practicing, preserving traditions that obviously have a very long history. And we know history is also very subjective, but the point is there is still something that makes it feel rooted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet nothing is stagnant. Any and everything really is evolving. And so, what does that mean to you in your practice?
Um, Honestly, I mean, I I kind of don't see myself as preserving it, in a
Okay.
way, yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also, it's more about bringing my take on it, right? Or
Yeah.
like or like expanding it, right? More than
Yeah.
preserving it. Like I think bringing a different worldview that those artisans have not had or Mamta Maya has not had, because we've all lived different lives, right?
Exactly.
And I think one other thing that's important for me to like say out here is that also Kalamkari, because they took me in, right? Like I
Mm.
wasn't born into the community. It's not
Mm.
uh a generational lineage for me. And that's something that most textile traditions are passed down like
Ah.
generation.
Mm.
Uh, so honestly, like a decade ago, it could have been jamdani weaving, it could have been embroidery, it could have been, block printing. It could, I have techniques and skills for all of these crafts. But
Mm.
when people ask me why Kalamkari, I'm like, it's also because they chose me and they let
Ah.
me in, right?
Mm.
Uh, they share their trade secrets, quote unquote,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
secrets with someone who's not blood, right? Like, or they've given me knowledge as an outsider. They've given me, just access to this craft and like even materials, like, when we do our workshop in Oakland, like
Yeah.
the materials come from them. They craft the pens
Ah.
and, they pens and, they send the fabric. Like even that kind of access, like I am able to practice what I do because of them, right? Because they let me
Mm.
in. So for me, like I think it's just me bringing my lived experiences and worldviews into the craft, and like with the hope that I can have like dialogues, and I, do and, more dialogues with the younger artists out over there, right? The younger
Mm.
generations, and like not like innovate, but like rethink or like just move the craft forward into
Yeah.
present works and doing it in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So I think like I'm just like one of the many voices who's
Yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
No, I'm nodding incessantly because it's resonating with me so deeply. I often even say for me, Kathak is my medium to tell stories. It's as much as I do feel a commitment to, on some level, preserving a dance style. I also know again that there's no singular way to do it. And I am certainly not the last word. I don't believe my Guruji was. I think he evolved it in a way that spoke to him, you know. So, but again, then, so it's a commitment to the form and, a real partnership with it to use it as my medium to do dot, dot, dot. Right. Uh,
Exactly. Look, medium is the right word. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I was going to ask, so there are, this is something that is actively being passed on to next generation. And like you are, many of them not, if you will, of the lineage. Are
Mhm.
there families, bloodlines that are very committed to that? Yeah.
I want to say that mostly it is still very generational and within the
Hmm.
bloodline.
Hmm.
Uh, there are a few who aren't, and I think a
Okay.
lot of that access is also to Mamtama,
Hmm.
because she herself is an outsider insider into the craft, right? Like 30 years ago, like she wasn't born into it, but she is a revivalist. She worked with a lot of artisans to build their businesses, to sell the products for them because they didn't know how to sell it, or like
Yeah.
she became the mediator between an artisan and a designer, right? Like to transmit those knowledge systems between both worlds, right? So she was
Right.
that medium and she is. So I think like a lot of us who are outsider insiders are because of her, but
Hmm.
otherwise it's still very, within their own bloodlines. Yeah.
Got it. Let's go ahead. We'll take another break here. Welcome back to Heart History. This is Farah Yasmin Sheikh, and today we're in conversation with Nikita Shah. And Nikita, I've noticed on some of what you share on your Instagram, and do say your Instagram handle for us as well.
Yeah, it's Nikita, Nikita dot untitled, Untitle.
So even before I get to the question that I was going to ask, untitled. I'm curious.
Um, I think Untitled because when I came to New York was when I had access to museums, and like access to museums in a more leisurely way and like consuming art in that sense that I never did growing up as a middle class child in India. Uh, but I was always drawn to artworks that were untitled because I think, it let me enter the art in my own context, even though, yes, the artist was, I'm sure, the artist has something going on. They always do and see a series and everything. But there's something
Yeah.
that's so like the artist is almost kind of like removed to an extent and like you enter that, piece and conversation. Uh, and that's something that really struck to me. And a lot of my, I think, work is also more like abstract, contemporary, in that sense where most of the times even I don't fully comprehend what it means, and
Hmm.
like every time I come back to a piece, it speaks to me differently,
Your
based
own
on where
your own piece or others or both?
both,
Yeah.
like I come back to it and it shifts, based on where you are in your life, in your day, in your head,
Yeah.
in your body, you know and I think that that feeling was so powerful to me
Mm.
that when when I and also honestly, there was a point where people were like, oh, so you are a designer but you also do art and you also teach, and so what's your title, and like
Right.
so many like boxes and binaries
Yeah.
that you have to like fit in, uh that honestly like I kind of don't want to
Yeah.
fit into a lot of the boxes. binaries. So yeah, that's my untitled.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and that is a lovely segue to what where my thoughts were going previously. And you mentioned you know, Kalamkari is not your only focus, right? You do textile work of different sorts. I noticed recently you hosted a workshop. It seemed like an interactive evening, and it looked like there was some embroidery happening. Talk about some of these other aspects of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So uh, when I moved here, like people perceived Indian textiles as what we know in Bollywood, and like fashion as what we know in Bollywood. And because I had the luck and privilege to
Mm,
see a different aspect of it, it almost became that I realized that people just didn't have access in the way that I did, right? Like,
mm,
and again, like it was privilege, luck, all of it together. That I got to like go spend months and weeks with weavers, sometimes living in their homes, and
mm,
not just the technique, that this is how you do your kalamkari, or this is how you do the embroidery, but it's so much more layered and deeper, that it resulted into just small workshops for friends, and they were like, oh,
mm.
but you're saying this, and what does it mean, and can you teach me, and can you talk more about it, which so I host, or I have a pedagogy called Fursat.
Yes.
uh, yes, where I um, converge feeling with textiles and their traditions. Uh, and it's something that I've been building in community with community, learning what I've learned from these artisan communities back in India and getting it over here in ways that I can in my space. And teaching, like those spaces are really about like transferring knowledge systems and upholding oral traditions and knowledge systems that are not formal, right? Or that have not been documented in textbooks necessarily. uh, so that's what Fursat is. I do the workshops once a month, uh, and a group of they're intimate, a group of people come back to like learn, but they're also structured and not structured in many ways,
Hmm.
right? Because it is to see that not everyone is on the same page, right? And they don't need to be.
Yeah.
And I just creating those spaces that I had access to. And again, like,
Mm,
I grew up very urban in India, right? Like I
mm,
grew up in formal educated schools. You know, English is my first language, even
mm,
though I grew up in,
mm.
and and then I was 19, and I was in this small weaving town for my graduation project in Maheshwar, and I lived there for 6 months, and I was like, this is how, this is also a way of life, this is also
Yeah.
how creativity happens, something that institutes don't teach us. So really, like this space is to kind of decolonize how we
Mm.
learn, or how, I don't know, how we get together in many ways.
Yeah.
And so the workshops have kalamkari, but also embroidery, because embroidery is something that is my blood lineage, actually.
Mm.
I
Okay.
learned it, yeah, I learned it from my dadi, my paternal
Mm.
grandmother. And so my ancestry is Gujarat. My dadi grew up in Gujarat. My aunts, my dad's sisters, my buas, my aunts grew up in Gujarat, and they came to Bombay. And me and my dadi had an estranged relationship all my life. And
Mm.
through many different reasons, but the only time like we were really connected was when we were doing textile work,
Huh.
because we were no longer like grandmother, granddaughter, and
Yeah.
all of that, but we were like two artists, or like two makers.
Mm. Yeah.
where, we spoke about motifs and she taught me, and, like, I'd want like a gray color, and she'd be like, this is such a dull color, and, let's do something more multi. So like those kind
Yeah.
of with 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 those kind of like embroidery techniques that I teach over here, it's really that understanding that I got, that textiles were healing in many ways that words
Mm,
aren't, and in ways that you could be different things to the same person through this kind of technique and through the thread.
yeah.
So that's why I mostly kind of like incorporate like embroideries and kalamkari, of course. Yeah.
Ah, beautiful. Let's go ahead. We'll take another pause and then we have to start talking about how you and I have crossed paths. Welcome back to Heartistry. We are speaking today with Nikita Shah, and fun side note. You mentioned that your dadi, what the embroidery that you did with her. I can't say I have that exact experience, but my dadima, she did embroidery work and cross stitching so much so she did it in Pakistan, and then even when she came to the States she continued to, and she would go and get a table at crafts fairs and sell some of her things. And so it's really sweet. I even have, my daughter happens to be, I named her after my dadima. And so the little sort of name card that my dadima used on her tables when she would sell her goods says Aziza. And so we still have that. And I have that out for Aziza. So it's,
So,
anyway, just, yeah.
these are ways that you hold lineages together, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
in everything else that goes on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you and I were relatively recently introduced thanks to Preeti Ramaprasad. Mainly, I believe she's the one that reached out to you, but she, of course, is co curating with Shruti Abhishek their fifth iteration of a festival known as When Eyes Speak. And it is San Francisco's only festival that really spotlights, highlights South Asian choreographers. And what's been so beautiful about what they do is it's not exclusively about dance. It they have in multiple iterations of it, and including the one that's coming up, invited artists of other mediums. And this particular year, in October 2025, I get to be the one who's sort of the selected choreographer. I'll be performing myself along with my company, Nirani Dance Company. And you will also be here offering a workshop on Saturday, October 11th in the morning in Oakland. And then the performances are Saturday at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., and then again on Sunday at 2 p.m. And without giving too much away, or maybe we'll go there, we'll see. You are even, you and I have had the chance to explore some collaborative components of your work and your beautiful creations as part of even the performance element. So, first and foremost, huge debt of gratitude to them for us connecting in this way. And it's just been such a joy to just always be, in that conversation, the creative conversations and whatnot. But I would love to hear in your own words anything that you want to say about your thoughts on being part of When I Speak, anything you can tell us about what folks might be able to hope to come away with having taken your workshop, anything.
Yeah. I think a little backstory with Preeti also,
Yeah.
and I think the connect is Mamtama again.
Okay.
Preeti, yeah, Preeti's known Mamtama since she was a little child, and she got to know me through Mamtama, and
Okay.
I think as younger generation, like she really resonated with the kind of work I'm doing, or the kind of
Mm,
work I'm Kalamkari. So again, like a technique that she's known in different ways, had a different form, which was exciting for her. So she really chased me down, and I have always been interested in looking at textiles beyond fashion, and that's
Hmm.
something that, and again, like, not to be very academic, but Kalamkari has a history of performance, very, very historically, where story cloths were used as murals for performers, right?
Right.
And there is a connection with storytelling, and
Yeah.
textiles have been a medium of storytelling. So for me, where I can kind of converge that with different collaborators,
Yeah.
mediums, it's very exciting for me to kind of see it shape in different forms and ways. Um, I think and without maybe giving away too much, like our theme for at least this year's When I Speak is nostalgia, and
Yes.
you know, uh, something that I think we both have spoken through these, 30, 40 minutes also, right? Like in different forms, even if you're not using the word nostalgia, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I like, if you come to my workshop, you will learn Kalamkari. I will give you a history lesson because I think context is so important in the way we think and the way we create, even if it's something quote unquote like modern or abstract, right? Like
Mm.
where it's from and where it comes from is, I think, very important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that again, like that rooting down, like takes us back into nostalgia, into land, into thoughts of home, and being able to again like explore it from a medium that maybe not a lot of us have been able to practice, with their own
Mm.
hands, even if they've maybe like consumed it as South Asians, right? Like maybe we've worn a kalamkari, sorry, or we've seen something, but to like actually hold the tool and feel it and make it and learn a skill uh, is something that you get to do. You get to
Yeah.
make your own piece, take home with you, and then we bring that into your performance also a little bit. And I don't want to give away a lot about it.
Sure.
I feel come and see. Yeah, I think they'll take away a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and again, even, what we shared before you joined in your introduction, how you use this technique as, again, a form of self-expression, how, you're exploring embodied memory, collective storytelling, this idea also of just sort of some of the themes, topics, the grief of being a woman within patriarchal systems, migration. I mean, the beauty, however heavy a lot of that is, the beauty is so much of what we're doing through our performance, which is called Saabit Qadam, loosely translated as perseverance, is also exploring so many of those themes. So the beauty of when you have sort of two art forms, and really speaking, there's multi-layered forms if we really want to get down to it, because music, dance, I'm sourcing a lot of my inspiration in poetry. It's a tribute to many artists and the art that has persevered through very adverse times in Pakistan, but sort of the collective message of what we share across borders, because often forced migration, as we know, partition of India and Pakistan was, as we're seeing it take place across the world, especially when we see it's not even forced migration. We're watching a genocide right in front of our eyes, and so all of these themes, and then taking these different artistic mediums of what you're doing, the music, the dance, the poetry, the lighting, just the way all of this kind of comes together to invoke and reflect. And yes, themes of nostalgia. I think the other thing I'd love to mention, which you and I have spoken about, is how we often categorize nostalgia as almost exclusively positive memory, but nostalgia is not, it doesn't have to always be about that. Nostalgia can kind of embody so much that just lives within us, and it's what is kind of provoking, and sometimes we use the word trigger, triggering that sentimentality and memory, right? So I am so excited for all the reasons. I think the only thing I'm actually quite upset about is I don't get to take your workshop.
We'll do a special one soon,
There you
separately.
go. I will not decline that offer. And this is not the first time you are working with dance. I know that you have worked with somebody I love dearly, Barka Patel. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, when you do collaborative, you know, elements such as this, whether with Barka, with, what you and I are doing, um, yeah, how does that work for you? I imagine it's not the same every time, but yeah, how do you approach these things?
I think I go back to the fact, I think I really think about that memory in Maheshwar as a 19-year-old and learning for the first time, or like not learning, like experiencing for the first time that, things can be made in community and not in a white tower, or an ivory tower, like a lot of like institutional
Yeah.
education teaches us. And I think when I collaborate with other artists or any person really, it
Yeah.
really is being able to look at my own work from a different angle, right? Things that
Mm,
I can't see is someone else can see it from a different perspective, right? Or does see, and like it gives me a, it widens my own approach and expands me. uh, I think with, and that's something that I've learned with Barkha, with you, even our conversations, we've spoken almost every other week, for a couple of weeks now, and learning, what this craft can mean and expanding
yeah.
it. So like it's my hand and my medium and whatever, but it is like so many people involved, and that's how it always has been, right? So I think that's, I really like working in community and in collaboration, or in even in conversation, right? Like again, it's about like breaking our, coming out of our own heads and minds, otherwise we can just get trapped in our own egos as human
Yes.
beings. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
I love that. Let's take our final break and then we'll come in for one last short segment. Welcome back to Heartistry. We have been speaking today with Nikita Shah, and I am so excited that in a matter of probably less than 3 weeks now, I get to see you in shared physical space, hug you. I mean, it is really beautiful. I will say nothing replaces the actual shared space. And yet I am very grateful for that we have become somewhat accustomed to kind of letting our guard down in these virtual spaces as well. And it's been such a joy to get to know you up to this point. Certainly, this conversation has been beautiful and hearing so much more that I hadn't heard yet. But again, can't wait to see you in real time. But I always love to actually, before I even ask you my final question, I'm just going to mention this again. Again, we are both being presented as part of When I Speak in San Francisco in the Bay Area on October 11th and 12th. Nikita will be giving a Kalamkari workshop on Saturday, October 12th in Oakland at 11 a.m. And then later that day at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., as well as on Sunday, October 12th, the festival will move over to San Francisco, taking place at Joe Good Annex. And that's where I will be performing with my company, Nurani Dance Company, in our project, Saabit Qadam Perseverance. And you will get to see elements of Nikita's presence and artistic presence and otherwise. There will be a post-performance question answer session after each show, which the co-curators, Preeti, Shruti, Nikita and myself will be a part of. And again, just really excited. So, best way to get more info and buy tickets and register for the workshop is to go to When Eyes, and that's eyes as if the eyes that we see with, plural. So that's WHENEYES, speak, SPEAK. So go to that on Instagram. We'll, of course, be tagging them here as well. But now back to you, Nikita. What I love to ask all of my guests is sort of my closing question is a little reflection on artistry itself. So it's obviously the word heart and artistry put together. And for me, I am about 200 episodes in and have had just so many amazing conversations with amazing humans such as yourself. And for me, when I launched the podcast, really the intention was to speak with individuals that are bringing a passion, compassion, and commitment to whatever they're doing. Clearly, you have exemplified that over and over again. But I'm also always curious what, if anything, either as I'm talking about it now or when I asked you to join me on Artistry, what, if anything, Artistry invokes for you?
Um, I think while having a conversation today, there is a little excerpt by Khalil Gibran that is really close to me, that I think really fits into all the different kinds of conversations we've been having about our artistic practices and history and our art and nostalgia not being romanticized always. And if you don't mind, I'll read
I
the
would love
excerpt out.
that. Yes,
I was
please name who this is. Yes.
This is an excerpt from Joy and Sorrow by Khalil Gibran. Uh, and I think the little part that always stays with me is when you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that it is only which is giving you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight.
Mm, I love that. I have to tell you, Nikita, that's a very poignant excerpt that you shared. Today happens to be my father's birthday, and he passed about a little over 3 years ago. And so, I think of him every single day, and if not at least every hour, if not every minute. And, you know, there's a phrase my dear friend Valerie Kaur has said. It's not something exclusive to her, but grief is the price of love, and it really hits hearing you say that. Like, the heavier our heart feels because of grief or sadness, it just means we love that much. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing it. And again, it's extra special today and a
Thank you
beautiful
for
reflection of your approach to, again, artistry as well.
yeah, thank you for having me, especially today of all the days,
Yeah.
and having this conversation, and into artistry and out in the world. Yeah,
Oh,
really
it's been
special.
such a joy. And again, I can't wait for all the conversations to continue in all of the ways.
Me too. And like
And
long hugs.
yes,
Really.
yes. And I will see you in a few weeks. But for today, thank you for your time on Artistry.
Thank you, Farah, for having me. This was a pleasure.